Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day, and on this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Alasdair Macleod to the program. A 40-year veteran of the finance industry, an expert in precious metals and sound money principles, and the author of the Macleod Finance Substack. We are going to get Alasdair's current outlook for both the gold and the silver markets. Both metals have been in consolidation for some time. Are they set to break out further, or is some caution warranted, at least in the short term? We're also going to explore why he thinks Britain is headed for economic collapse and why he believes there is no way out of their predicament. How does that all end? We're also going to talk about Musk's new America Party, a legitimate political solution to tackle government debt and deficits, or a new political party that is doomed to failure. All of this and so much more. While you're here, Commodity Culture has merch. Get yours by clicking the link in the description below. And for now, my friends, strap yourselves in for my conversation with Alasdair Macleod. Alasdair Macleod, great to have you back on Commodity Culture. Before we dive into gold, silver, the global economy, all that good stuff, I have to get your thoughts on Elon Musk's new political party, the America Party. He announced on X that he was putting this party together, a true party to represent the people. I believe he used the words, give you your freedom back, whatever that means. It's become more of a buzzword than an actual intention, I think, these days, coming from the mouths of people involved in politics. What do you make of this? Do you think this party actually stands a chance of gaining traction? And if so, could it do anything about the untenable debt and deficit situation? Because that's been one of Elon's main gripes, this big, beautiful bill being passed, how the GOP was supposed to be the ones coming out and exercising fiscal responsibility, and they're not. So he's very upset about this. So he wants to create this party. Does he have a chance of making any impact here, or are the wheels in motion and can they not be stopped?
No chance. Forget it. It's a two-party system, and you're either a Republican or a Democrat, and you work from within the party. We've had some pretty impressive people stand for presidential election in the past, and, that's it. They drop out. RFK recently. There's a chap called, was it Perot, some time ago? I'm getting back.
Ross Perot, yeah.
Whenever it was, yeah. There are enough people who think they can do better than the government, but, the system is a two-party state. And if you're going to do anything, you have to be either Republican or a Democrat. And then, of course, you get caught up in the machinery of government and can't do anything. So the answer to your second question is no, I don't think it's going to make any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, what is the solution then to this two-party state where it seems like it's become more and more like a uniparty these days? No matter, there's that meme out there, no matter who gets elected, the debt keeps rising and the bombs keep dropping. It seems like we're in this situation where it doesn't matter who you vote for anymore. Trump was kind of that hope for a lot of people who really wanted change. I think he has not delivered at all on any of his promises to bring about real change. I think he has proven himself to be pretty much just like if a Democrat were to get elected. What are your thoughts there? Is there any solution, or does the whole system have to collapse for things to improve?
Yeah, basically the system doesn't work, if you like, in favor of the people who elect the system. The system, I think, is in a sort of situation where it is actually almost anti-productive. Now, this happens throughout history. You have times when governments just have completely lost the plot, and that's where we are now. It's not just America. Look at Europe. Brussels hasn't got any plot at all worth mentioning, other than the self-aggrandizement of the individual politicians, and also the permanent staff who just want to continue the situation. It's a wonderful gravy train. One, B, it's got so complicated to do anything that you don't get anywhere. They've had audits. No, they haven't had audits because they sacked the auditor because the auditor kept on saying we can't do an audit. That was a long time ago. I think it was a Danish lady. And of course, in America, we all want to know, how much gold America has got. What happens? We can shout from the top of the hills, God's sake, go and do an audit of the gold. Never happen. Never happen. The system knows how to protect itself. And it's just completely lost the plot. I mean, the idea that they represent people. I mean, you come to an election, they make all sorts of promises, but then, it's back to business as normal, as you say. So there isn't a solution. I think eventually the fiat currency system will collapse. And I think we are actually in the end game of fiat currencies. The collapse of fiat currencies undoubtedly will change things. Whether it'll be for the better or worse, I don't know. Only time will tell.
And now a quick break to hear from our sponsor, ARC Silver Gold Osmium owner Ian Everard is considered one of the most honest and level-headed gold and silver dealers in the United States, praised even by his competitors. So give him a call today to take advantage of the specials right now. Silver Kangaroos 2023 1-ounce coins, mint fresh, only $2.47 over spot. Mint fresh silver maple leafs 2025 coins, 1 ounce, $2.87 over spot. While supplies last. Reach out today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And now, back to the interview. Yeah, we've got no audit of Fort Knox. We've got no Epstein list, no end to the war in Ukraine. All of these things that are being promised are now being completely reversed. Trump now sending weapons to Ukraine again after a brief pause there. Well, I also want to get to the woes happening in Britain economically, which you wrote about recently on your Substack. But first, let's talk about gold. Obviously, being on a tremendous run, it's been consolidating sideways for around 4 months now. Do you consider this a healthy breather when it comes to the gold price after having risen so high in such a short amount of time? Do you expect gold to break higher from here? And is there any risk of a sharp correction back down? Could it be overbought in your view?
Yeah, well, technically, you could say that it's a healthy correction, but I think that's the wrong way of looking at gold. It's not gold going up, it's the dollar going down. And it's not just the dollar. The dollar is the best, or if you like, the most important of the fiat currencies. Dollar goes down, the others go down as well. At the moment, the race to the bottom is being won by the dollar, but I'm sure that'll change. That'll turn around. So I think that's the way to look at it. So any fall in the price of gold, in other words, rise in the value of the dollar relative to gold, I think is severely limited. I wouldn't rule out a bit of volatility. I mean, they're trying to get it down as we speak. They've sort of managed to get it below 3,300 for the second time in 2 days. But, yesterday, when, which was the 8th of July, and this was when all the trade tariff agreements were meant to be announced, or, America was just going to say, well, these are the rates and so on and so forth. Okay, it's been postponed a little bit and they're mucking around with it. But they're trying to get gold down, sort of trying to get a positive spin for the dollar. Just don't buy it. I mean, it's complete nonsense. What is going to change? Nothing. And furthermore, the dollar is in a debt trap, and that debt trap is being sprung shut, and there is no escape. Well, there is an escape, but politically it's completely implausible. The idea that you cut spending. We've got a spendthrift president. His business background is real estate. What does he want as a real estate guy? He wants lower interest rates. He'd quite like a lower dollar because that would suck in the tourists, or whatever the argument is. So he turns around and tells Powell, "Get those rates down. We want to see the dollar lower." This is real estate man talking. I mean, and his big, beautiful bill, another God knows how many trillion of dollars. And that's probably a base figure, actually, rather than the end figure anyway. So, I mean, he's just destroying the currency. And not only that, but the tariffs undoubtedly are putting the world into recession. And when the world goes into recession, the tax take to cover the debt, if you like, to theoretically cover the coupons on the debt, will diminish. So you have debt increasing while tax drops. That is a debt trap. You can't finance the debt. And they're already having problems rolling it over. So I think that's where we are. Where we are. I mean, I really do think that any dip in the gold price, you will find central banks, Asian families, all the rest of it will be in there picking it up. And of course, the way they're doing this, if they can do it in London, fine. But otherwise, they're just standing for delivery on Globex, which is the international facility on COMEX. And I mean, the amount of gold being stood for delivery is just increasing and increasing and increasing. I mean, since April the 2nd, which was Trump's, Liberation Day, over 250 tons have been stood for delivery. Where's he going to come from? Not America. I mean, they're cleaned out quite quickly. So it's at the moment it's coming out of the COMEX faults, but really, I think that the system, basically the gold derivative markets, are entering a crisis because you have to ask yourself, all the gold that went into COMEX, where did it come from? Some of it was leased gold that came out from the Bank of England. What do central banks do under those circumstances? They see their leased gold has flown the coop because it's not their property while the lease, while the lease is in force, as it were. Their gold is gone. Are they going to get it back? Well, there's a big fear that they won't. And consequently, what do they do about leasing in future? No, thank you. We don't want to lease any gold anymore. And furthermore, some of them are going to say, we want to repatriate our gold. Can we bring it back? Bank of England, put it on the next plane. So the liquidity has gone out of the market. And those bare positions, if you like, in London, long positions in New York with all the bullion that flowed over, a lot of that's going to be reversed. And the ECB is even worried about it, which interests me because I was a lone voice saying, watch those stands for deliveries. And the ECB, in a document released, I think, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, said exactly the same thing. Stands for delivery on COMEX are basically taking all the gold away, and it's replacing gold in Europe with derivative positions, which increased 58% in the first quarter of this year. They're worried that these derivatives are now presenting a systemic risk, particularly since it replaces real bullion, which was otherwise stored in the Bank of England and elsewhere. So this is quite a serious issue. And I can understand why, at the margin, the bullion banks would want to get bullion down, measured in whatever currency. They want to get it down. Why? Because they want to get as much of it as they possibly can. We're all buyers of bullion now. I mean, and this is not really properly understood. So that's my answer to whether gold is going to continue to consolidate, and is it going to sort of come off a bit? Well, I tell you what, if it comes off a bit, fill your boots is the answer.
Let's talk about silver as well, because it continues to maintain an above $35 price range, and it's done quite well year to date, outperforming the S&P by a wide margin, and currently almost exactly matching gold's gains over the same time frame. Give us your thoughts on the silver market and also silver derivatives. Are they in the same position as the gold derivatives market at present?
Basically, yes, because the level of warehouse stocks in COMEX increased in silver at the same time as it did in gold. The difference is that warehouse stocks in gold have actually begun to decline, basically, as stands for delivery have been enacted. Now, the silver position hasn't declined. That is still pretty much at the maximum level of something like, I think, 500 million ounces. I mean, off the top of my head. And that is interesting. In other words, I think what the new owners of silver are doing, having stood for delivery, is that so far they've been leaving it in the COMEX warehouse system. Now, having said that, we don't actually know this for certain. It could be that silver is still going into the COMEX system. I mean, there's a delay in getting silver through, let's face it. So, there could well be some silver still going into the warehouse system, even though the premiums on the futures are no longer really there. So that could be holding it up as and covering, if you like, any withdrawals. But I think from the point of view of the new owners of silver, they're probably in less of a hurry to take it out of the vaults than new owners of gold bullion. I think that might be part of the explanation. Silver is interesting because as people gradually realize that the dollar is going down and other fiat currencies are going down with it, we're coming to the end of the fiat currency era after, 53 years. As they gradually realize that, I think they will also realize that a gold-silver ratio of 90, which it is roughly, is completely ridiculous. There is no premium, if you like, for its monetary use or its monetary qualities in the price. And not only that, but this is a background of 5-6 years of supply deficit, only matched, according to the Silvers Institute, by, if you like, sales or liquidity coming out of investment stocks. So, and also the industrial use of silver is just expanding and expanding and expanding, particularly with photovoltaic cells. I mean, they are everywhere now, absolutely everywhere. And China, of course, makes something like 90% of them. India wants to get in on that act. So you can see that the demand for silver on an industrial scale is enormous and growing. I'm sure that higher silver prices, as far as the photovoltaic cell industry is concerned, will basically make them use silver more efficiently, if you like. So I don't see price really being a hurdle to them. Technically, it also looks very, very good. So, the chartists among your viewers, get out the chart, have a look at how the silver is performing relative to the moving averages. It's come out of a fairly long period of consolidation and is ready to rocket. And I think, I think it's as simple as that. It's also, for people who feel they've missed gold, which is, if you like, an indication of their lack of understanding of what's going on. But if they want to get onto the gold bull market, then silver is a cheap way in. 90 ounces to one of gold. You've also got the potential that this could drop to 50, say, which means that silver would really outperform gold from here on. So, if you really want to get back into gold, having missed it, then, buy silver and then swap it for gold once the gold-silver ratio drops to a level which you think, is more sustainable.
You wrote an article recently on your Substack titled Britain's Impending Bankruptcy. I want to read a quote from it here. You said the sheer costs of rising and unfunded welfare obligations in Britain leading to financial collapse are a lesson for all G7 nations. There is no escape. Break down what you're seeing for us in regards to the British economy, and why do you see no escape from this financial collapse?
I'll sort of say something about that statement in the first place. What was clearly demonstrated in our parliament over the last week or two is that it is impossible for a socialist government to cut welfare. Welfare spending is the USP of a socialist member of parliament. It's as simple as that. If he supports cuts in welfare spending, then he's out in the next election. That's it. That's the end of his political career, so-called. And the point about this is that obviously things are so bad within the Treasury in terms of their numbers and how they've gone awry, that this, which is a last resort, for a Labour government. The Labour government was forced to try and get it through. They failed completely. We see the same thing in France. France is effectively ungovernable when it comes to cutting public spending. Spain also has gone far left. You'll see exactly the same thing there. Italy, a beacon of hope maybe, but you're still talking about a debt to GDP about 140%, something like that. Germany, all this defense spending and all the rest of it. And Metz saying that, we've got to accept the fact that we're going to borrow more. The government has got to borrow more. In other words, any sort of clamp down on debt ceilings, whatever, is going to be abandoned there. Governments cannot control their spending. It is out of control. It's as simple as that. The story in the UK is, I think, probably slightly worse than I indicated in that article, because if you think about it, the high taxpayers, the top 1% taxpayers of income taxpayers pay 30% of all this country's income tax. They're leaving. They're going. They're gone. Not only that, but the non-doms or non-domiciles, non-dom being short for non-domicile, a non-dom basically could live here and pay a fee of, I think it's been raised to £80,000. And having paid that fee, he pays no UK tax on his non-UK earnings and capital gains. And not only that, but inheritance tax as well. So that's, 80 grand. I mean, if you're a sort of pretty rich guy, 80 grand, okay, we'll pay 80 grand. It's a nice lifestyle and all the rest of it, we'll put up with it. That has gone. That has gone. And with it, the non-doms are going too. We have a real revenue problem. Virtually everything else that the Chancellor did in her first budget was to satisfy ideological demands from not only her own ideologies, sort of anti-capitalist and all the rest of it, but also those of trade unions who support the Labour Party, who fund it, and also all the left-wing MPs and all the rest of it. So this was payback time. This was, anti-capitalist payback time. Consequently, every policy that she's taken out, if you like, in that first budget, has destroyed her revenue stream completely. I mean, this is very, very serious. She ended up in tears in Parliament the other day. Now, it wasn't something that someone said. She was obviously thinking about, what was actually happening, because this was the debate, or it was after the debate, actually, where they had dropped any attempt to cut welfare spending. Yeah. So she was sitting there in tears. It was obviously her internal thoughts. And I think she has been told by her permanent officials at the Treasury, the feedback we're getting from HMRC, which is our tax man, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, is that tax receipts are falling very, very short of what they expected. Also, we have seen the property market has completely seized up. So capital gains from properties, which come in literally within 60 days of a property being sold, that's drying up. The whole thing is a disaster. And as I said, I put out an article today. As I said, it's one of those moments where undoubtedly she would have sat down and think, oh my God, what have I done? Now you can understand why she was in tears in Parliament, sitting there thinking about it. I mean, she's screwed it up big time. We don't know this yet. All we know is that, yes, she screwed it up, but you've got the Office of Budget Responsibility, saying, well, there's a little local difficulty here or there or whatever, and we think that the economy might contract in the next quarter by 0.01%. I mean, all this rubbish is complete nonsense. So we don't know yet. But I'm absolutely certain that what is going on is a complete collapse of this country's finances. And we are in the early stage of it. She's not going to be able to fund it. She's now got a problem because, the way the socialists answer this, it's quite simple. We just raise taxes on the rich. We don't like the rich. They're all a bunch of bastards. They've made their money illegally or by stealing it from someone else. So we'll just take it off them. And, it's not going to work. It doesn't work. We're over that Laffer curve. We're going down the other side of it very, very rapidly. That's actually her problem. Anything she does to increase taxes is just going to make the situation far worse. She can only cut public spending, but she doesn't have the mandate to do it. That is the crisis. And it's not just us, as I say, it's France, it's Spain now as well, Germany perhaps less obviously. America, God, my goodness me. The big new beautiful bill and all the rest of it. That just shows a complete lack of understanding of the seriousness of the position that the Americans have put themselves in. It's a slightly different story from the one in Europe, which I've just recounted in UK terms, but, it's still the same thing, spending beyond our means. And when we actually wake up and understand that our economies are deeply in recession, then you'll see that the debt trap is slammed shut. And that's it. It's game over. Can the Fed reduce interest rates? No. We all expect the Fed to reduce interest rates. I look at my Bloomberg and they say twice this year. Yeah, dream on. I was talking to some Australian friends this morning and they said, I don't know if you know this, but the Reserve Bank of Australia was expected to reduce interest rates this week or yesterday or whatever. And they didn't do it, and it stunned everybody. Oh, are you surprised? The point about central bankers is they're not stupid. They can see this. They understand it. Powell isn't stupid, even though Trump claims the man's shouldn't be in his job and he's got to cut interest rates. Powell is not stupid. He can see this. He can't turn around and say to everybody, look, the outlook is not lower interest rates, forget it. He can't do that. But I can tell you, he knows the outlook is not for lower interest rates. And the problem America has is that because everybody borrowed when interest rates were right down at zero, they now have funding problems. We're talking about companies, corporations, local businesses, and all the rest of it. And they got problems. The banks have got problems. What the Fed and the Treasury are now doing is they're changing the liquidity rules for the big banks to free up some credit because they realize that nobody's going to buy their debt. So they're changing the rules so that their banks can lend the government money in the form of T-bills mainly. Let's face it, banks aren't stupid either. They're not going to go and particularly after the regional bank fiasco we had in 2023, when the rise in interest rates, which were never going to rise again, incidentally. I don't know if you remember that. Never going to rise again. And what happened? Regional banks start going bust because they bought the story. It was never going to rise again. And what they did was they were funding themselves out of money markets at 0.5% or whatever, and buying long bonds yielding 0.75%. Wow, what's not lot to like? We'll leverage it up even. So look, banks are not going to do any term lending to the US government. What they will do is they'll buy T-bills because they've really got no option. And the regulators say that is the risk-free investment. Well, we know it's not the risk-free investment. The risk-free investment is actually gold. Not that gold actually yields anything for them, but you can see the whole system has got itself into a terminal fix.
Do you think part of the issue lies with the kind of socialist mindset that is so prevalent among citizens of a lot of these countries these days? It's very interesting. In Canada, obviously, we have so-called free healthcare, but you pay what is essentially a tax out of your paycheck every month to go towards this medical program, which is now so broken in many parts of Canada. I know I've heard similar stories in the UK that you're put on a wait list for like a year when you have something that needs to be dealt with, or it could turn into a potential life-ending situation. And yet people will brag about, well, we have free healthcare, or they just that mentality of wanting some sort of handout from the government and not realizing that they're basically taking your own money and giving you back a portion of it. The illusion of getting something for nothing still seems to have a strong grip on people in a lot of these nations. Why is that in your view? Does that mentality need to change for the system to change?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously it does. I mean, as you rightly point out, everybody wants to go for a free service. I mean, if something's free at the point of use, then demand for it goes into infinite. From, if you like, anyone's point of view, they might understand that it's being paid for in taxes and all the rest of it. But, the answer is that personally, I should draw on the system as much as possible to get my value, get whatever. But as you say, the system is broken. And I heard reports today, actually, from someone who was in the middle of government and I think is still pretty well connected and understands these things. He follows these things, that even Ukrainians who came over to the UK are going back to the Ukraine for their healthcare because they can't get any service out of the National Health Service here. I mean, would you believe it? Go back to a war zone in order to get your hip mended or whatever it is. I mean, the whole thing is a nonsense. And the whole system is heading towards a collapse. I'm sorry to say it, because everybody relies on government welfare of one sort or another, and they just don't understand that the government cannot afford to do it. And it's going to get to the situation where the only way in which anything will get paid for will basically be with the currency in effect being printed. Okay, I mean, you've got debt on one side and credit on the other side. But, I really think that, the only way in which this is going to be resolved is that government will step in with its magic money tree and support everything. And not only that, but because interest rates haven't come down, we've got all these zombie companies. I mean, we've got Thames Water, absolute classic. That was a very, very good example of what has happened. We've got zero interest rates. Thames Water get taken over by private equity operation. Now, the great thing about these water companies is they're regulated. And the regulator sets the amount of, the income side is set by the regulator. He says, you can raise your prices by X percent, and it's usually a pretty small amount. But you've got to invest in the infrastructure, this figure here, and so on. And what he calculates in this is so that you're left with a figure like, say, 7% return for shareholders. Okay? But when interest rates go to zero, or close to it, you get private equity boys stepping in. They buy the company, and they leverage it up. This is a utility income, which is guaranteed by the regulator. What's going to go wrong? Oh, we forgot to take account of the possibility that interest rates might rise. And that's where they've got. Thames Water is now a bust. Yeah. And the government's going to have to rescue it because we need water. We can't just let the thing go under. We're talking about Thames Water for, 12 million people, more than that, in and around London. It's tragic. And the Thames Water is just an example of what's gone wrong with this cycle of interest rates and the way in which central banks, if you like, almost forced by governments, lowered interest rates to zero. And in the case of the EU, the Eurozone, and also Japan, into negative levels. And it's just, we're going to pay for that, I'm afraid. And it's the payment basically is, turning everybody into zombies. And every day that passes with rates where they are, basically is another day towards the death of these zombies. And interest rates, bond yields and interest rates, as I said earlier, they're going to rise. Because what does an interest rate reflect? It reflects the risk of credit. And as credit gets more risky, the cost of borrowing, cost of issuing new debt rises and rises and rises. Happening for governments, and it'll also happen for much of the private sector.
If it were up to you, what is the economic framework that you think would be best in which to run a society? Some might argue that some level of socialism is needed for public roads, highways, public transportation, public parks. They would say, well, the government needs to deal with that because that's a shared service. That's one argument for socialism, I think, from an economic standpoint. All the way on the other side, we have anarcho-capitalism, where perhaps the government isn't necessary. And everything in between. Obviously, I know you believe we need gold to return to the monetary system to bring back sound money principles for things to improve from here. But what framework would you use to kind of, obviously fixing the problem from here isn't the right way to put it, but just to run a society? Let's say we the whole thing collapses, as you say, and we need to rebuild and go back to an honest unit of accounting in the form of gold. How would you run that economic system?
Well, I think the first thing that I would need to have is the mandate to do it. And basically, this is interesting because Milei that's his name, Milei in Argentina, has managed to get a mandate to do something. Now, whether it's enough or not, time will tell. But he has, I think, taken the mandate. And it's been very interesting because fighting the establishment, he's done the right thing. The establishment just hated the thought that Milei would swing his chainsaw and all the rest of it. Because, they're losing power, they're losing jobs, they're losing, if you're a bureaucrat, you're not used to this. And particularly in Argentina, not only you're not used to it, but, you get not just your salary out of it, but there are all sorts of other perks as well. You're going to lose all that. So I can imagine that Milei sits down with let's say, the leaders of various ministries. And he says, right, this is what I'm going to do. Bang, 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 bang. And if you don't like it, let's have another election. We'll put it to the people. Now, the permanent staff know that if there's another election, he'll be backed even more. But this is something you have to do the moment you get in. Now, there is no political mandate in this country or in America or indeed around Europe to take the necessary action to move states away from state dependency. We're not just talking about welfare, we're talking about dependency in all sorts of other areas as well. You mentioned infrastructure. There is a case for government to maintain infrastructure and possibly improve it where necessary. But it's a wasteful way of doing it. I've seen, I remember in Grenada in the Caribbean, seeing a bridge which had been built by government money. Now, not Grenadian government money, but, one of these multinationals, World Bank or something. I don't know. Obviously, the problem with government is that they don't do things for sensible reasons. They do it for political reasons. This is the whole thing. And they built a bridge from a place which was nowhere to a little island which was completely uninhabited. And it was capable of taking 3 lines of traffic. It took me a hell of a thing to get there and take a picture of it, which I've got somewhere in my archives. But that's what happens. China, on the other hand, when I was there, was building a bridge on the west side of the island, which was linking 2 halves of a town, which was divided by a river. Now that makes sense. So, when we look at infrastructure, logically, governments are better at doing something than they are at acting in other areas. But then I bear in mind that in Hong Kong, when the financial secretary was asked by business, look, we've got to put a tunnel into Kowloon. This is from the island into the thing. And he said, this was John Cowperthwaite. He said, well, if it's justified, then you do it. I'm not going to do it. If it's justified and commercially viable, then you go ahead and do it. And they did. And it works. That was a classic example of where government really is needed to improve the infrastructure. I mean, there you've got this island, which is incredibly populated with all sorts of businesses. And you've got Kowloon, which is the sort of end of the new territories where everything comes in from the new territories and all the rest of it. I mean, you've got to have a tunnel, of course. Sorry, of course you have. But no, John Cowperthwaite turned around and said no. And he was right. So the moral of the story is that the private sector can actually do its own infrastructure. I mean, you might have to pay tolls on new roads. But that works. So I don't buy the story. I mean, I'm not ruling out roles in infrastructure entirely. I think there may well be, but to bull it up as this is something only government can do, I think is a mistake. Returning to your point, I would need that mandate. I would need a Millet mandate and more. And I think the only way that I would get that is a complete collapse of the fiat currency system. Then I reckon I could probably restructure the economy, restructure the way things work, cut out all the waste, as much as one possibly can. I would rejig the way the Treasury works, because the way the Treasury works is they have one general account. Everything comes into one general account, and then it's dispersed out there. The problem with that is that people get taxed one thing, and the money gets spent on something else. So I would introduce something which would horrify the Treasury officials. And that is and this is the technical term, I would hypothecate revenue. In other words, taxes for maintaining roads will go back into maintaining roads. Everybody in the economy has got to know that if government takes money out of their pocket, where it is going to be spent. I think a lot of the problem is because revenue is not hypothecated, people just see sort of government has got, I just shout loud enough and I'll get money from government. They don't actually associate the function of that money from government with its source. That has got to be returned. So, I mean, there are things like that that can be done. But basically, you've got to get government out of business. I would get the central bank, the Bank of England, to stop trying to manage the economy with interest rates. We go back on a gold standard. The reason that you change interest rates is to manage your gold reserves. That is the function of interest rates, to manage your currency either against other fiat currencies or to maintain your gold reserves. If they run down, if there's a run on your gold reserves, you have to raise the interest rates in order to ensure that some comes back in again. So there are all these things that can be done. But principally, I think slim down government completely, remove an awful lot of stuff. I mean, there's so much waste. There's so many things that can be cut out. As Millet's, I think, demonstrated quite clearly in the Argentine. I mean, so I think that's the answer to your question. I mean, not that I'll ever be elected to do it, and I don't think I'd ever want to stand to do it. I'm getting too old for that sort of stuff. I think I would want to be off sailing on my yacht somewhere by then. Probably into oblivion somewhere.
Yeah, and that's also the problem. Not many good people who have the right idea actually want to be in positions of power in the government, because it is not a gig for those who have, let's say, moral scruples about certain things. Well, Alasdair, this has been a fantastic conversation. Tell us about your Substack, Macleod Finance, and what it is you do there.
Yeah. My mission basically is to educate people about what's, this horrid train that's coming down and is going to just smash everybody. Government finances basically are taking us to the end of the fiat currency era. We now have, I think, a sensible approach is basically to do what you can to preserve your wealth. Forget about trying to increase it, because we have a credit bubble which will go pop. We have tariffs. It's exactly the situation in 1929 to 1932 when we had the credit bubble going pop. Wall Street lost 90% of its value. And just to ensure that everything really went belly up, you had the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. This time we got Trump's tariff tantrum. I tell you, this is just like 1929. It really is. 1929 all over again. You need to know how to protect yourself under these circumstances. And that's what my Substack does. I try and inform people, and I'm trying to inform ordinary people, as well as anyone, who has financial expertise, but particularly ordinary people, because unless you actually understand what's happening, you haven't got a chance. No chance at all. So that's what I do.
Absolutely agree. Great. I'm going to put a link in the description to the Macleod Finance Substack for people who want to check it out. Thank you once again, Alasdair, for coming on. It's been a blast.
That's my pleasure, Jesse. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us today. Take advantage of ARK SGO's specials right now. Silver Kangaroos 2023 1-ounce coins, only $2.47 over spot. Silver Maple Leafs 2025 1-ounce coins, only $2.87 over spot. While supplies last, reach out to owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arksgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. Also, pick up your Commodity Culture merch, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and mugs, all backed by a 100% quality guarantee. Link in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.